12 mistakes people make before blood tests. Have you ever left a doctor's office thinking, that blood test didn't seem right? Maybe your cholesterol came back higher than expected, or your blood sugar was strangely off, even though you've been eating clean and exercising. Here's a little-known truth. It might not be your health that's off. It might be the test itself. But not because the lab made a mistake, because of something you unknowingly did before the test. Yes, your body tells a very different story depending on what you eat, drink, or do in the hours, or even days, leading up to that tiny needle prick. A sip of coffee, a few push-ups, chewing gum, brushing your teeth, or taking your regular vitamins. These innocent habits can quietly sabotage your lab results. And most people have no idea they're doing it. That's the hidden danger. Doctors rely heavily on blood work to diagnose everything from diabetes and heart disease to vitamin deficiencies and hormone imbalances. But if your numbers are off, even slightly, it could mean the difference between peace of mind and a prescription you didn't need. Or worse, it could mean missing an early warning sign your body was trying to send. In this video, we're uncovering the 12 most common mistakes people make before getting a blood test. And some of them are probably things you're doing right now, thinking they're healthy. One mistake in particular, number 7, has fooled people into believing their thyroid is balanced when it's completely out of sync. So if you've ever had confusing lab results, or you simply want to make sure your next blood test tells the real story of your health, stay with me. Because this information might just save you from misdiagnosis, unnecessary medications, and a whole lot of confusion. Let's get into it. 1. Drinking coffee. Let's be honest. Most of us can't imagine starting the day without that sacred cup of coffee. It's practically a morning ritual, especially when you know you're heading into a blood test. You think, it's just black coffee, no cream, no sugar. What harm could it possibly do? Well, spoiler alert, that innocent mug of magic could throw your results for a loop. Despite being calorie-free, black coffee is not neutral when it comes to your metabolic system. It contains caffeine, which triggers the release of catecholamines like adrenaline and cortisol. These stress hormones, in turn, can elevate your blood glucose and insulin levels, potentially skewing fasting glucose or HbA1c results. According to a study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, caffeine intake has been shown to acutely impair insulin sensitivity in healthy individuals, even in the short term. So if you're getting tested for diabetes, metabolic syndrome, or insulin resistance, coffee beforehand could give your doctor the wrong impression, making it seem like your blood sugar control is worse than it really is. And it's not just glucose. Caffeine can also mildly increase blood pressure and stimulate gastric acid secretion, which might not mess with your labs directly, but can lead to discomfort during longer fasting periods. Now, I know what you're thinking, but skipping coffee makes me feel like a zombie. Totally valid. You don't have to give it up forever, just for 8 to 12 hours before your test. The fix? Stick to water only during the fasting window. Most fasting labs require 8 to 12 hours of no food or drink except water, and that includes coffee, tea, and even zero-calorie sweeteners. Think of it this way. Would you rather skip coffee for half a day or take medication you don't need because your results were misleading? 2. Exercising. You might think squeezing in a quick workout before your blood draw is a productive move. Sweat a little, feel good, check off a healthy habit before facing the needle. But here's the plot twist. That jog or gym session could be secretly sabotaging your lab results. Exercise, especially intense or prolonged physical activity, triggers a temporary physiological shift in your body. When you exercise, your muscles demand more fuel, which means your body releases stored glucose from the liver into your bloodstream. This can cause a spike in blood sugar levels, even if you haven't eaten a thing. Now imagine your doctor reviewing your test and seeing elevated glucose without knowing you crushed a morning hit session. Suddenly, you're being told to watch your sugar when, in reality, it was just your biceps doing their job. And that's not the only number that goes haywire. Strenuous exercise can cause a rise in creatine kinase, CK, and lactate dehydrogenase, LDH, enzymes your body releases during muscle stress or repair. Elevated levels of these markers can falsely suggest muscle damage, inflammation, or even cardiac concerns, depending on the context. Not exactly what you want showing up on your medical record just because you went beast mode on leg day. A study published in Clinical Chemistry revealed that even moderate exercise can significantly alter blood parameters, including white blood cell counts, electrolytes, and hormone levels like testosterone and cortisol. The effect can last for hours after you've stopped moving, sometimes even into the next day. So, how long should you wait before working out and getting a blood test? Experts generally recommend avoiding moderate to intense exercise for 24 hours before your appointment. If you simply must move, opt for light stretching or a casual walk, but skip the dumbbells and the burpees. It's ironic, right? The same habit that keeps you healthy can make your lab results look less than ideal. But when it comes to blood tests, your body needs to be in a calm, rested state. 3. Taking supplements. You might pop a multivitamin every morning without a second thought. Maybe it's fish oil, iron, B-complex, or your go-to collagen blend. Harmless, right? After all, these are supposed to support your health. But when it comes to blood work, those little capsules can pack a deceptive punch. Here's what most people don't realize. Supplements, whether herbal, nutritional, or mineral, can alter key blood markers and confuse your results. For example, taking biotin can interfere with certain immunoassays. These are specialized lab techniques used to measure things like thyroid function, troponin levels, important in heart health, and hormone panels. In fact, the FDA has warned that biotin may cause falsely high or low results in these tests, potentially leading to misdiagnosis. Then there's vitamin C, often praised for its antioxidant benefits. But in high doses, typically anything over 500 milligrams, it can distort glucose readings by interfering with the reagents used in some lab machines. The result? Your blood sugar might appear lower than it actually is. Not ideal if you're monitoring for diabetes or prediabetes. Even iron supplements, taken before a test, can temporarily spike serum iron levels and skew ferritin, transferrin saturation, and other related metrics. That one pill can make it seem like your stores are adequate or overloaded, when that's not the real story. To avoid this biochemical masquerade, most doctors recommend holding off on all non-essential supplements for at least 24 hours before your appointment, unless your physician has told you otherwise for a specific reason. Always check what type of test you're doing. Some panels, like vitamin D or B12, actually require you not to supplement beforehand to get a true baseline. So, next time you're prepping for labs, give your supplements the day off. Let your body speak for itself, without any nutritional background noise. 4. Not drinking enough water. You remembered the date, skipped breakfast, even left your supplements on the shelf, but forgot to drink water. Simple oversight, right? Unfortunately, that small act of neglect can quietly sabotage your blood test in ways most people never realize. Hydration isn't just about feeling less thirsty. It directly impacts your blood volume and plasma concentration. When you're dehydrated, your blood becomes thicker, more concentrated, and harder to draw. That means your veins are less plump, the flow is slower, and your poor lab technician might have to poke around longer than either of you would like. But that's just the beginning. Dehydration can artificially elevate certain blood values, like hematocrit, hemoglobin, and serum creatinine. These aren't just numbers. They're indicators used to evaluate kidney function, oxygen carrying capacity, and red blood cell concentration. When these appear higher than normal, it might falsely suggest issues like polycythemia, kidney dysfunction, or even electrolyte imbalance. According to a study in Clinical Biochemistry, dehydration before a routine blood draw can alter lab measurements by up to 15% in some cases. That's enough to shift a normal value into a flagged range, potentially sparking unnecessary worry or treatment. Now, let's not go overboard either. Chugging 2 liters right before you leave the house isn't the goal. What your body needs is steady hydration over time. The ideal strategy? Sip water throughout the day prior to your test, and have a small glass, about 8 to 12 ounces, an hour before your appointment. That keeps your blood fluid, your veins easy to access, and your readings honest. So, don't underestimate the clear stuff. Staying properly hydrated is one of the simplest, most overlooked ways to ensure your results reflect reality, not dehydration's distorted mirror. 5. Eating just a little something. You wake up hungry, your stomach's rumbling, and the blood test isn't for another 2 hours. You think, what harm could half a banana do? Or maybe it's just a cracker, a tiny handful of almonds, or a sip of juice. It's not exactly a buffet, so you assume the fast is still intact. Here's the cold, clinical truth. Even the smallest snack can send your results in a completely different direction. Fasting means no food or drink that contains calories, period. That tiny bite kicks your digestive system into gear and stimulates your pancreas to release insulin. Once digestion begins, even minimally, your body's biochemical environment changes. And it doesn't take much. Just 10 grams of carbohydrates, roughly 1 slice of apple, can elevate blood glucose, disrupt lipid metabolism, and interfere with hormone levels like insulin, cortisol, and ghrelin, all of which may be measured in your test. Fasting labs are typically used to assess baseline levels, your body's natural state without the influence of recent meals. The American College of Cardiology recommends a fasting period of 9 to 12 hours for lipid panels, and a similar duration is often used for glucose and metabolic testing. Even chewing gum, which many don't think twice about, can kickstart insulin secretion and throw things off. Let me tell you about a guy named Sam who figured this out the hard way. He had his test scheduled for 9:30 a.m., skipped breakfast, but nibbled on a protein bar just to take the edge off at 8 o'clock. His blood sugar came back higher than usual, and the lab flagged his triglycerides. His doctor recommended repeating the test. The second time, on a truly empty stomach, everything fell into the normal range. Moral of the story: there's no such thing as a small cheat when you're fasting for labs. That one bite might not fill you up, but it could fill your report with misleading numbers. 6. Smoking. You might think one cigarette before your appointment won't change anything, especially if it helps calm your nerves before the needle. But what seems like a harmless puff can set off a chain reaction in your bloodstream that leaves your lab results completely distorted. When you inhale tobacco smoke, your body reacts almost instantly. Nicotine, the primary addictive compound, stimulates the release of adrenaline, triggering a cascade of changes: elevated blood pressure, increased heart rate, and a temporary bump in blood glucose. Not only that, smoking also increases levels of carbon monoxide in the blood, which reduces the amount of oxygen that red blood cells can carry. This can lead to artificially inflated hemoglobin and hematocrit levels. Researchers from Tobacco-Induced Diseases Journal found that smokers often show higher white blood cell counts, a marker typically associated with infection or inflammation. So your doctor might see a red flag and start looking for an infection that isn't even there, all because of a cigarette an hour before the test. And we're not just talking about heavy smokers. Even 1 or 2 cigarettes, or a few puffs of a vape, can temporarily shift your internal chemistry. For people undergoing cholesterol or heart health panels, this matters even more. Smoking can temporarily elevate catecholamines, which in turn can increase circulating free fatty acids, skewing lipid profiles and making it appear as if your cardiovascular risk is higher than it truly is. Experts generally recommend avoiding tobacco in any form for at least 8 to 12 hours before a lab test. This gives your system enough time to stabilize and show a more accurate snapshot of your health. 7. Not mentioning medications to your doctor or lab technician. You show up for your blood test, hand over your lab slip, and sit quietly as the phlebotomist prepares the needle. No one asks what pills you took that morning, and you assume it doesn't matter. But here's the catch. Staying silent about your medications, even the ones prescribed, can drastically alter how your results are interpreted. Prescription drugs, over-the-counter remedies, and even natural extracts can influence a variety of blood markers, sometimes in ways that mimic disease, mask deficiencies, or lead to completely misleading results. For instance, steroids like prednisone can elevate white blood cells and suppress inflammatory markers, making it look like your body's immune response is low, even if there's a chronic condition hiding underneath. Beta blockers, common for blood pressure, can lower heart rate variability and affect thyroid test outcomes. Even antidepressants can alter levels of prolactin and cortisol, both of which show up in hormone panels. But it's not just the heavy-duty drugs. Aspirin, taken for a mild headache, can thin your blood and skew platelet counts or affect bleeding time. Antihistamines, taken for allergies, can temporarily suppress eosinophils, which may lead to an underestimation of allergic responses or parasitic infections. That's why transparency is everything. Before your test, make a detailed list of all medications, prescriptions, supplements, herbal blends, patches, sprays, and creams. Share it with your doctor and the lab technician. In many cases, they'll either reschedule the test or flag the lab for interpretation based on your current regimen. Timing also matters. Some medications should be taken after your test, depending on what markers are being measured. Always follow instructions carefully, and if you're unsure, ask. There's no downside to being overly clear, but there's plenty of risk in staying quiet. 8. Stressing out right before your test. You're sitting in the waiting room, your mind's spinning. You're thinking about needles, results, diagnoses, that weird ache in your shoulder, and what happens if the test shows something scary. Meanwhile, your body is doing something you can't see. It's reacting, and not in a way that helps your lab numbers. Mental stress, even if short-lived, doesn't just stay in your head. It triggers a surge of cortisol, along with a spike in adrenaline. These hormones prepare your body for fight or flight, which might be great if you're being chased, but not so much if you're trying to measure resting values. This hormonal spike leads to elevated blood glucose, increased white blood cell count, and altered electrolyte balance. A study in the Journal of Endocrinological Investigation found that acute emotional stress can cause temporary insulin resistance and hyperglycemia, even in individuals without diabetes. That's how quickly your body can misbehave under mental pressure. There's more. Stress impacts thyroid hormones, inflammatory markers, and even testosterone. And if your test is checking hormone balance or immune function, anxiety might be enough to skew the whole picture. So what's the solution? Arrive a little early. Breathe deeply. Bring headphones and listen to calming music. Avoid last-minute rushing or traffic jams that put you in panic mode. Give yourself at least 15 minutes to sit quietly before the test begins. Let your system settle so the results reflect your normal, everyday baseline. 9. Getting tested at the wrong time of day. Let's say you wake up, take a long walk, grab some water, and decide to get your blood test done around 3 p.m. Sounds fine, right? After all, blood is blood, regardless of the hour. But here's the surprising reality. Your body's chemistry changes dramatically throughout the day, and those fluctuations can turn your lab results into a completely different narrative, depending on when the test is taken. Many hormones, enzymes, and metabolic markers follow a circadian rhythm, a natural 24-hour cycle regulated by your internal body clock. Take cortisol, for instance. It typically peaks in the early morning, then gradually tapers off. If you're being evaluated for adrenal function or fatigue-related disorders, testing in the afternoon can produce artificially low readings, leading to misinterpretation. Even TSH, thyroid-stimulating hormone, which is crucial for assessing thyroid health, can shift subtly depending on the time blood is drawn. A few hours difference might not seem like much, but it could push your reading across the threshold from borderline to abnormal. In a study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, researchers highlighted how timing significantly influenced thyroid hormone levels and recommended consistent morning testing to improve diagnostic accuracy. Let's not forget fasting duration either. If you fast too long, say, past the 14-hour mark, your glucose might drop while ketones rise, sending strange signals about your metabolism. That's especially confusing for diabetes screenings or lipid panels. To avoid this roller coaster of variability, it's best to schedule your blood work early in the morning, ideally between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m., unless your doctor specifies otherwise. This provides the most stable, comparable, and accurate baseline for most markers. 10. Overeating the night. So, your blood test is tomorrow morning. You've got the fasting part down, the appointment's booked, and you figure, why not indulge a little tonight? Maybe it's a rich, greasy dinner. Maybe it's dessert with extra toppings. You tell yourself, as long as I don't eat in the morning, I'm good. Not quite. What many people don't realize is that your last meal before a fast casts a long shadow over your blood chemistry, especially when it's loaded with sugar, saturated fat, or excessive carbs. Even after 8 to 12 hours of fasting, your body may still be processing the metabolic effects of that meal. Lipid particles like triglycerides and chylomicrons can linger in your bloodstream well into the next morning, distorting your cholesterol panel and liver enzymes. In fact, a study in Metabolism, Clinical and Experimental showed that postprandial, after eating, lipid levels remain elevated longer in individuals who consume high-fat evening meals, and this can persist beyond standard fasting windows. Ever wonder why your ALT or AST enzymes, the ones related to liver function, come back slightly elevated after a night of comfort food? That overloaded liver from last night's feast could still be working overtime during your blood draw, showing signs of stress that don't reflect your typical condition. To ensure accuracy, keep dinner the night before your test light and balanced. Think fiber, lean protein, and plenty of water. Avoid fried foods and sugary desserts. It's not about depriving yourself. It's about getting a true picture of your health. 11. Not getting enough sleep the night. Let's face it, sleep is often the first thing we sacrifice when life gets hectic. But skimping on rest the night before a blood test? That's a silent saboteur you don't want to mess with. When you don't get enough quality sleep, say, less than 6 hours, it doesn't just make you groggy and irritable. It throws your entire system out of balance, including some of the key biomarkers measured in blood tests. Several studies, including a notable one from the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, have shown that just one night of poor sleep can elevate your cortisol levels, and it can skew results related to glucose, cholesterol, and thyroid function. And here's where it gets even trickier. Sleep deprivation can increase insulin resistance, temporarily raise blood pressure, and even throw off inflammatory markers like CRP. Imagine being told you might have prediabetes, when in fact, your body was just reacting to that 2 a.m. Netflix binge. And let's talk about your nerves. Without enough rest, your anxiety levels can shoot up, making you more likely to feel faint, dizzy, or even nauseous during the test. You might find your heart racing before the needle even comes out of its cap. What's the fix? Aim for 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep the night before your appointment. And if you struggle with falling asleep, try winding down with a cup of chamomile tea. Avoid screens for at least an hour before bed and dim the lights to help your brain release melatonin naturally. In short, don't underestimate the power of a good night's sleep. It's not just beauty rest, it's biomarker rest. Because when you snooze, you don't lose. You get accurate lab results. 12. Drinking alcohol the night. You might think, it's just one glass of wine. What harm could it possibly do? Well, when it comes to blood tests, that casual drink the night before can send your results on a wild detour. Here's the science behind it. Alcohol directly impacts your liver, kidneys, hydration status, and blood sugar levels, all of which are commonly assessed in standard panels like lipid profiles, liver function tests, glucose levels, and complete blood counts. Even moderate alcohol consumption can temporarily alter enzyme levels, especially ALT, AST, and GGT, which are liver-specific markers. In fact, research published in the Journal of Clinical Pathology notes that even a few drinks within 24 hours before testing can increase triglyceride levels, giving a false impression of high cardiovascular risk. Alcohol also causes dehydration. And let's not forget alcohol's effect on blood sugar. A few beers or cocktails can cause fluctuations that mimic hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia, confusing results if you're being screened for diabetes or insulin resistance. Pair that with reduced sleep quality, because alcohol messes with REM cycles, and now you've got a domino effect of misleading markers. Here's the kicker. Alcohol can stay in your system 6 to 24 hours, depending on what and how much you drank. So if you're scheduled for a fasting blood test the next morning, your body may still be in recovery mode from that margarita. What's the smart move? Avoid alcohol for at least 24 hours before your blood test, preferably 48 hours if your test is especially liver-focused or fasting-related. Not only will this give your body a chance to stabilize, but it ensures your doctor gets a clear picture of your health, not your happy hour. Before you head out, let's take a moment to reflect. Today you discovered that even the smallest habits, like sipping coffee or hitting the gym, can quietly throw off your blood test results. It's not just about numbers on a lab report. It's about understanding how your daily choices shape your health story. The takeaway? Mindful, informed decisions matter. Whether it's fasting properly, skipping the supplements, or simply asking the right questions before your test, every little step counts. Remember, health isn't about perfection. It's about awareness and progress. Small changes lead to big results. If you found this eye-opening, hit subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and share your experience in the comments below. Let's grow a community where we all support each other in living more vibrant, empowered lives. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay intentional, and always listen to what your body's really saying. See you in the next one.